Coming up next, I'll share 3 tips to help you stand out in the job search this January and how to use your web of connections. We'll also take your calls and your chat questions, and it all starts right now. I'm coming to you live from Ramsey Solutions Studios in Nashville, and you are joining a conversation about who you are, what you were created to do, where you want to do it, and how you can get there. It is about purpose, specifically working on purpose, because if you're working on purpose, you will find that you are living on purpose. Work is such a huge part of our lives, and unfortunately, most people think of work as a function that we have to do to live. So I work to live. In other words, I work to bring in a paycheck, and the paycheck allows me to just do life. Well, when you look at work that way, and millions and millions and millions of people do, and generation upon generation upon generation have, then you settle. You settle for a job. And then that begins to conflict with this desire that every human has to make a difference. We go, well, why am I here? What should I be doing with my life? These are the big questions we wrestle with. And when we don't see the connection between why we're here and work, the contribution we want to make, the contribution we are making in the workplace, when we disconnect the two or don't see the connection, work becomes a drudgery, lifelong slog. Well, I just have to do it. That's why you're miserable on Mondays. That's why you can't wait to get home on Friday. Try to forget the week. And then you're miserable on Sunday night again. Life's too short to live that way. We believe here on the Ken Coleman Show that you were created to work. Not as a workaholic, not as a worker bee who just has no life and all you do is work. No. You were created to contribute, and your work creates a result. Why shouldn't you do something that you're good at by using your talent? Why shouldn't you do something you love, something that the work itself fires your heart up? Why shouldn't you create results in the marketplace that are significant to you? There's the sweet spot when you use what you do best to do work you love, to produce results that matter. Talent, passion, mission. Those are gifts. Think of them as indicators on your personal dashboard. You have the answers, trust me. It's my job to get them out of you. So let's have this important conversation, shall we? It's your show. It's a caller-driven show. I'm going to teach a little bit later on Web of Connections. We get this call so many times. Ken, I don't have any connections. I don't think I have the right connections. And I'm going to teach on this today. As a matter of fact, Joe, I meant to ask you for a Sharpie. So be on standby. I may have you walk a Sharpie in a little bit later if I get so inspired. Nathan, be ready for a close-up because we may do just good old-fashioned drawing today. I might get that inspired. We'll see how it goes. 844-747-2577 is the phone number, 844-747-2577. All right, 3 tips on how to stand out in the January job search. Okay, so here we are, first month of 2021. A lot of people going, okay, I'm getting in. I'm going after it with reckless abandon. So I thought, all right, what are 3 just little tips that, again, I teach on a regular basis on the show, but for those of you that are new and for those of you that need the review, here we go. How do you stand out? How do we beat the competition is essentially the question. All right, the first thing is do what other people aren't doing and actually attempt to find jobs that are in your sweet spot. It may not be the dream job, but it's in your sweet spot. What do I mean by that? Well, let's look for jobs where you are bringing a lot of talent to the table. You look at the job description and you look at your list of top talents. Ding, 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 we have a match. Then we look at passion. At least work you enjoy. At least work you enjoy. It doesn't, again, we're not talking about the dream job. It doesn't have to be. Okay, if you're getting in and moving up, that's fine. But do I enjoy the work? And does the work create a result that has a deep value connection for me? Now, again, talent, passion, mission, you don't have to have all 3 of those in alignment just to get in that day job that gets you on the ladder to the dream job. However, why not look for all 3? Look for all three. Let's start there. Because in looking for sweet spot opportunities, we will see what we are looking for a little bit clearer. We will see the gaps and go, okay, great, I can do this, and this gets me there. So let's at least try that because, again, you stand a better chance of not just getting the job, but winning in the job. So let's look at the sweet spot fit. Let's try to find things that are close. Close is okay. Number 2, connections. Connections. I'm going to teach the web of connections later in the program, but I've got the best-selling book, The Proximity Principle, that is a deep dive on connections, which I say are the currency for progress. You have got to think, what are my connections to these jobs that I'm looking at? Let's go look at the jobs first. Don't start with connections. Let's go jobs first. All right, let's look for the closest we can to a sweet spot fit. Then we go, okay, what connections do I have in those companies and maybe even to the hiring managers? I got to have some connection, and you do, and I'm going to do a deep dive teaching on this later in the program. But you try to match the connections. The third thing is your resume. Excuse me, I hit the mic there. Your resume and your interview performance are what sets you apart. Now, I say that a resume is worthless without a relationship. That's why I hit connections as number 2. Okay, so you just submitting resumes blind, you're playing the resume lottery. Does it work? Yeah, it does. Is it the best way to go about it? No. However, assuming now that we've got a sweet spot fit, we've got connections, and now we're submitting the resume because we got connections in the company or connections with somebody in the company, and they hear that we're coming, they hear great things about us. That resume needs to really stand out and make you look really different. And the Ken Coleman Show resume does. We even have templates that you can buy for $9.99. We got 6 of them, in addition to the free one you get in the resume guide at kencoleman.com. Hundreds of thousands of people have used it, and the testimonies still are flying in. And then the interview itself. Preparing for the interview will allow you to perform under pressure. We've got the How to Win the Interview Guide, which is a free resource at kencoleman.com. I'm not selling you anything. I'm giving you the codes, the cheat codes for you video gamers out there to stand out in the resume and interview process. So go get them. The Get Hired Guides are at kencoleman.com. 844-747-2577, 844-747-2577. Let's get to the phones. Wichita, Kansas is where we're going to start out. Pamela is on the line there. Pamela, you're on the Ken Coleman Show.
Hi, how are you?
I am living the dream, Pamela. What's up?
So I had a question for you. I graduated with an MBA in 2007. I worked about 2 years, and then I stopped to be a stay-at-home mom. I have been out of the workforce about 12 years, and my youngest is going back to school, so I thought that I would head to work. I have sent out so many resumes, and I haven't had a lot of luck with getting a job. Mm-hmm. I guess my question was, I had applied earlier in the year to go to graduate school to be a physical therapist, mm-hmm. and I got in. But I have 4 degrees, and I'm kind of hesitant to go back to school to get another degree.
Yeah.
When I've had a really hard time getting a job, so I wondered if you could.
Well, I feel like we're getting things out. Yeah. Let's get the right perspective. The question is, do you want to be a physical therapist? Doesn't sound like to me you do. It feels like to me it's something. Now, tell me if I'm wrong, but this is part of why you called me. So either you really want to be a physical therapist and you've got some really specific reasons why, or you just find it to be mildly interesting and you think, well, it's a good career and let me just apply and, oh gosh, they accepted me. Now what? And it's kind of like you've got this whole thing backwards. Well, I'm having a hard time breaking back into the workforce after being out 12 years. It feels like everything's driving. We get the caboose driving instead of the engine, which should be your heart. So the question is, do you really want to be a physical therapist?
I thought I did, but from your comment, I'm definitely more of the B scenario where I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
Having a hard time getting a job.
Yeah. Well, let's just
I got
stop.
in.
Let's stop all the, because I feel like you're just applying, and you're probably not using the proximity principle. You're not using the web of connections, which I'm going to teach on here. I want you to stay tuned, by the way. I want you to watch me a little bit later in the program. I'm going to teach this for you. I'm going to give you some advice now, but I want you to kind of stay with this and get some extra teaching. But it feels like to me, you're just kind of, well, I'm just playing the resume lottery like I just talked about to start the show. Is that true?
A little bit. I think so.
Okay. Here's my question. You've been out of the workforce for 12 years raising kiddos, which good on you, by the way. Okay. And despite what you may be thinking, you are not irrelevant. You have an MBA. Goodness gracious. You got 4 degrees. You are as impressive and as relevant as you were when you went home. You really are. Despite the gap. You still are a very talented woman. So let's just pause everything else and go over the 12 years you've been out of work. All those times when babies were down for naps and you were exhausted and you let your mind wander about what it might be like when all of them go back to school or whatever the situation is. You wondered about something. What did you wonder about? Say it.
I don't know.
No, you had some, even if it was a fleeting thought. What would you try tomorrow if you knew you couldn't fail? It was just like, whee, this is a fun professional adventure. What would you try that you always thought about? Maybe as a 17, 18-year-old girl. I don't know. But don't tell me you didn't wonder about, wonder about this. I wonder about that. Say something. What's on your heart right now?
Well, I used to enjoy, at my church, I really enjoyed planning events.
Okay.
Like I'd plan large, like women's.
How did it feel? How did it feel when you started out on the project? Okay, we got this event coming up. Pamela, we need you to help plan it. Were you excited? Did it make your heart skip a couple beats? Yeah. What was it like in the middle of it when you had all those details and all those contacts and you were up to your eyeballs? How did it feel then?
It could be stressful, but I always enjoyed the work.
Yeah. How did it feel when the event went well?
It felt good. I was usually sad it was over.
Yeah. Boy, we got some really good clues right there, don't we, Pamela?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my question. Is event planning, because that could be a lot of different things. That could be wedding coordinating. That could be graduation events. And I know, we're in a COVID season, right? I understand all that. But eventually all those things are coming back. And on some level, they're going to come back fast. Do you know how many people are going to get married, I think, in 2021 that put off their weddings in 2020? I mean, it's going to be crazy how many weddings there are going to be. Your church is still going to do events eventually. There's going to be all kinds of things. Is that something that you would love to do, is plan and execute events?
I would enjoy that.
Yeah. So here's what we do. Let's do some clarify, verify in the days and weeks ahead. So let's get a hold of, this is using the proximity principle, which says in order to do what Pamela wants to do, she's got to be around people that are doing it and in places where it is happening. So you volunteer when events start working their way up again and happening. You start volunteering if you can, if you have to make some connections where you don't have them. But where you do have connections, let's get on the phone with somebody who's an event planner. You've got your city, local government, Parks and Rec. They all do events and things like that. So you've got, all kinds of organizations, private sector, public sector, faith sector. And if you want to get into the event game, you start talking to people that work in that. What are the positions that are available? And, you ask yourself, do I have the core talents that are necessary? Which would be organized, detail-oriented, project, you love project management, that kind of thing. Does that all sound about right for you?
Yes.
Yeah. So here's what we do. We start talking to people in this space. And you start looking for what jobs may be available. If not available now, you could always go get a day job, just, kind of get yourself back out there, but even then, like if you go get a day job, if you were doing some type of detail work, organizational work, project management work, you could go do that for somebody else. and say, you know what, I'm taking this job because the live event stuff isn't where it needs to be. There aren't the right jobs there now, but I'm going to get myself back in, and I'm going to be an admin assistant if I have to. And what am I doing? Just burnishing my resume, adding more stuff to it, getting my juices flowing again. And I'm looking all the time, got my head on a swivel looking for, an event planning company or party planning or, working at a conference center in your area. In Wichita, Kansas, they got a lot of event venues there. And so, what are the major event venues? Everything from concert halls to convention centers. So what I'm doing right now for you, Pamela, is I'm brainstorming for you to start looking in those places. What you've got to do is clarify and verify by talking to people that work in those spaces. Hey, do you know somebody that works over here? What's that like during a day? And when they describe it to you as if you were interviewing them for a college term paper, which you've done, Pamela, your head and heart, once the information goes in your head about what's involved, what's it like day to day, then your heart's going to verify or reject the idea. And then we rinse and repeat for other ideas. But instead of you just randomly applying for things, let's get real specific. Do you have a copy of my book, The Proximity Principle, Pamela?
No, I don't.
Okay. This is the deep dive on the right people in the right places. And I'm going to give it to you. So I want you to hang on the line. And Madison is going to give you whatever format you want, the ebook, the audio, or the hard copy, which, by the way, for the rest of you, you can get all three of those book formats for one price of $25 at kencoleman.com. And it is the manual on how to make connections and how to get opportunities. The right people plus the right places equals opportunity. When I'm around the right people, they point me and put me in the right places. When I'm in the right places, I connect with more of the right people. Folks, it's not as difficult as it seems to get where you want to go, but you got to be intentional to identify and then connect with the right people, to identify and show up in the right places. And that book walks you through the whole process. 844-747-2577 is the number. Letitia is up next in Simi Valley, California. Letitia, you're on the Ken Coleman Show.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
You bet, Letitia. What's up?
So my main question is regarding checking in on an application.
Mm-hmm.
I applied to a corporate job last month, and they don't list any sort of office contact info, no phone numbers, anything like that, obviously no emails. They just have customer service line because they're a consumer corporate business.
Okay. So what's the latest? Give me the timeline.
It's been, so about a month, and I've tried to, search on Google Maps or anything like that. And while I can find their address, they actually don't have any sort of number listed.
Okay. That's interesting. And what was the latest what was the last communication from, explain what happened when you applied?
I usually just apply through the job search websites. I didn't find them through their own
Right.
corporate website.
Yeah, but did you get like a corporate email or something that says, congrats for applying, we've received it? I mean, what all has happened?
Right, so it's that usual no reply email address, and they just kind of confirm that the application has been sent and that they'll review it and they'll get back to me if they see I'm a fit.
Yeah, I don't want to pop your bubble here, but it's not a good sign that you haven't heard.
Oh no, yeah, I figured a month went by. This is probably a no-go, but I am coming across this when I do find opportunities at other corporate businesses where a customer service line is the only phone number listed.
Yeah, so you can dig a little bit more, but the whole point. So let me put it this way: can you find another number if you work your relationships and connections where somebody's got? There's got to be somebody who knows somebody over there and can get a real phone number. But what's the point of that?
Mm-hmm.
See, because here's the thing: when you're applying and you don't have a connection in a relationship that's kind of vouching for you, going, let me tell you about Letitia. She's really sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you get a phone number, tell me what's going to happen if you get a real phone number over there. Tell me how you see it playing out.
I mean, I would definitely always love the opportunity to just call, try to reach whoever reviews my application and just reiterate how much I would be appreciative of the opportunity to get the job, or how much I would look forward to working for them, how I feel I'm a candidate and what I bring to the table.
And I love that about you. So I want you to direct that energy to working your web of connections. It's kind of funny, Joe. I'm going to teach on this today, and it's like both calls are heavily in this area. So Letitia, here's the deal. I love your spunk. I love your spirit. I want to encourage you. But if you got a real phone number, you got the chances of you getting an actual audience with the hiring manager like you just described, where you call and you say, who's the hiring manager for this position? They go, let me look that up for you. Oh, yeah, it's Rebecca Smith. Would you like to talk to her? Yes, as a matter of fact, I would. All right, let me put her through. It's not going to happen that way. The chances that happen are 1 in a million. Okay? So, because that's why they have the online application system, and that's why they got all the things. I mean, it's just not efficient to do it that way. That's why nobody does it this way. So I don't want to shatter your thoughts, but I want to redirect that same spunk and go, here's what should happen. As you apply going forward, here's what you're doing. You're going, okay, I've applied for company XYZ. All right? Anybody in my direct network, I'm talking friends and family, really good friends that are coworkers. You know anybody over there? You know anybody over there? Well, I don't know anybody over there personally, but I think my friend does. Oh, great. Would you connect me with your friend? You've got to work those connections to where you go, who can actually not just get me a phone number so that I'm out there trying to pitch myself. That's not why. Who can actually say, you know what, I'll do a Zoom call with you, or I'll do coffee or lunch because you and I have a mutual friend. And my mutual friend says you're a rock star. So yeah, I'm willing to, because of my friend, I'm willing to vouch for you and take your resume in and hand it to the hiring manager and go, hey, through a friend of a friend, and they explain the relationship connection. Letitia has applied already. I'm just kind of pulling her out of the online pile and saying, hey, I hear good things about her. Like, that's how it works. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure. And I actually go on LinkedIn to see if I know somebody, or if there's, somebody who is connected to one of my contacts. Obviously, if I have a personal, then I reach out to that personal person or connection to see if they can either reach out, or if they have a number, if they can check in. So yeah, absolutely. I definitely believe in the proximity simple.
And I know you do. And I know you do, but I'm just saying, don't waste your time or effort.
Sure.
Trying to go about the way you just said. And here's why. It's, you know what it does? It just adds more frustration and negativity to an already, kind of a tough, frustrating process.
Definitely.
And I just want you to put your energy into turning over rocks, did you ever play the match game when you were a little girl? You know what I'm talking about? Where you had like these, this is essentially the game. Okay. Mm-hmm. I see a giraffe here. All right, let me turn over another one. Oh, that's an elephant head. I got to remember that. And it's that idea of, okay, who do I know here, 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 and here? And if I work it long enough and enthusiastically, eventually something's going to pop. And there's no magical answer as to how long it takes for you versus how long it takes for me. But I just want to encourage you, that's the way to go about it. Because
sure, that sounds good.
Because listen, you're going to get your shot to do the very thing you want to do over the phone anyway. You know what I mean? And and I would tell you this, you're such a spunky person. I'll say this to you. I don't think everybody should do this, but I think if you keep working those connections, you'll find not just a phone number, you'll get their address. You'll find somebody over there who knows the receptionist, and you could show up and deliver a handwritten note to somebody. Put it in there and say, hey, would you put this in their mailbox? I got a little something, but this idea of showing up and, standing in the lobby, that gets creepy for people. So I don't recommend that, but I do think you could go above and beyond, and show up and drop a handwritten note off in their mailbox. I think a receptionist would do that for you, so I think there's some little things like that can make you stand out. So, but stay with it. Don't give up. I love your spunk. 844-747-2577. 844-747-2577. Coming up, I'm going to get to your chat questions, and I'm going to really unpack this web of connections. And, Joe, I need a Sharpie. Bring a Sharpie. I think we're going to have fun drawing. Don't move. This is the Ken Coleman Show.
We were drawn to Christian healthcare ministries because we both had young families and we wanted to have more children. And we had also just started a real estate company and needed to find healthcare coverage that would meet our needs. We were attracted to CHM because of its low monthly costs and the ability to negotiate medical costs down.
Established in 1981 and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, CHM is here to meet the needs of your growing family or small business. Check us out at chministries.org.
We absolutely believe in it.
Welcome back, folks. I am, as we speak, drawing. This is fun. Madison, the associate producer, jumped off the phones, and she brought me in a Sharpie. And, you know, I've wanted to do this for a while. This is the ugliest spider web you've ever seen in your life. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do full disclaimer on there on what I'm drawing here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out of order, Joe. I'm going to get to the chat room in a minute. But I'm hot on this. Our 2 phone calls today have really been about relationships and connections. And so I attempted to draw a spider web. And, Joe, what it looks like is a severely bloodshot eye is what I think this is going to look like. Let's have some fun with this. Nathan, which camera? Let's go close. Okay, so I want everybody to kind of look at this. Look at this. Oh, gosh. Isn't that fantastic? Now, that's my spider web. I know it looks like somebody's been up for 36 hours. But you see, that's essentially my version of a web, okay? It works, okay? Having some fun with it. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Okay, I'm gonna keep drawing on that. All right?
Well, at least you got the red out.
Yeah, I did get the red out. Okay, but here's what I want to do. So let me give some quick context. I wrote about this in my best-selling book, The Proximity Principle, where it's just like, here's how to make connections. Connections are everything. Opportunity comes to us from who we know and who they know. And so we're gonna have fun with that. So listen. There's your first nugget of notes. It's not just about who you know; it's who they know. So think about that for a second. It's not just about who you know. Let's say you know 200 people. It's about who those 200 people know, okay? So that's where the web of connections comes from. By the way, it's not a phrase I created. This is a well-known phrase used in psychology and sociology circles. All right, let's first talk about how powerful a spider web is and why I love the web analogy. Joe, I did some research on this in anticipation of today's teaching. And this is just a fun little nugget. Did you know that the silk that a spider spins, if you will, they use, is smaller in circumference than a hair on our head?
Knew that.
Did you really? So if you pull a hair out of your head, and Joe, don't do that because you don't have as many as I do, so you need to save yours.
You're right.
You pull a hair out of your head and you look at that and you go, oh my gosh, a spider web is thinner than the hair on my head. But while it is thinner than the hair on our head, it is as strong, listen to this, pound for pound, as steel. Pound for pound. So understand in the context, pound for pound, it's as strong as steel. So, we all love Spider-Man. There's been about 80 versions of Spider-Man in my lifetime. And when you see Spider-Man swinging from building to building, and it's like this thick cord. Well, the reality is it's not that thick, but it is that strong. So why am I talking about this? Because the spider uses that silk and puts a web together in my really awful drawing, just from piece to piece to piece. And what does it become? It becomes this circular trap for bugs to get stuck in, and the spider takes their sweet time crawling up the web and eating the poor bug. It also makes for a wonderful freak out for all of us who've ever late one night or early one morning walked face first into a web. You know what I'm talking about? Is there anything funnier than watching somebody walk along and they start doing this number? And they're freaking out. You know they're full of spider web to the face. Now, the strength of the silk is the metaphor. The strength of your web of connections. Again, my terrible drawing, but I'm going to have some fun with this, okay? So this inner circle, I'm drawing this really thick right here. Okay, this inner circle, where are we at, Nathan? I'm coming back to you. Okay, that inner circle, the dark inner circle, that is, we're talking about close, intimate relationships, all right? So those would be friends, very close friends, and family members, okay? Now, when we get outside of that, what all is on the outside web as we kind of come from that center? Well, those would be coworkers, current coworkers. They know a lot of people. You're in a place you want to leave. If you trust them, and some you can, well, they've got relationships. So they would be a coworker. We could say people that you went to college with that you still associate with. You're not super close with, but you still associate with them on social media, and you have a good relationship with them. Okay. Then we could also talk about your kids' network. So the parents of your kids' friends, school, sporting activities, all of those things. Again, that's kind of, we're getting outside of that close inner circle. And so all of those relationships would be considered acquaintances. And we know from sociology research, Mark Granovetter, I talked about this in my #1 best-selling book, The Proximity Principle, most people get jobs through their acquaintances. So many of us are looking at, well, I only know 12 people really well. Well, how many people do you know? Forget the really well. Because here's what we know. The human spirit wants to help others. And so if you think about your social media connections, your acquaintances, again, your friends, friends of friends, parents of your kids' friends, all of a sudden, I can pretty much get just about anybody to about 100 people. Probably closer to 200, 250. If you throw in social, maybe you're getting closer to 500. Now, how many people do you think each of those 500 connections knows? Well, let's just say they know 500 or 200. You can do the math however you want to. Even the most cynical among you go, okay, I'll go with the 100 or the 200 number. Well, when we begin to look diligently, this is when opportunities present themselves. And so I'll give you a story from my journey on how this works. And Joe knows this story. I was in a desperate situation, much like our caller earlier, Letitia, where she called up. She said, Ken, I've applied. I haven't heard back in a month. I'm trying to find a phone number. I'm just going to call somebody up and tell them how great I am. Well, I told her lovingly, that's not going to happen. But I did the same thing when I tried to get into radio. Here I am in Atlanta, and I was in a really desperate place. And I was in a season where I was like, okay, I got to make something happen. So I started calling 3 or 4 different radio stations, cold call, leaving voicemails, emailing the program directors. Well, folks, that just doesn't work. But I did it because I think sometimes we all just go, okay, I'm just going to put myself out there and hopefully something happens. Well, guess what? It's a recipe for discouragement. And it didn't work. So I'm sitting in my basement office one day after not getting anything, crickets. Can't catch any opportunity. Been calling, been emailing, can't get anything. And I sit down and I want to explain this web of connections a little bit more detail because here's what I did. I actually created a spreadsheet on my computer and I began to look at all of my Outlook contacts. And as I would go through, and I went A to Z, it took me about 2 hours. But as I went A to Z, I basically said yes or no, meaning I feel like I could reach out to them, or I feel like, I'm not going to reach out to them. But I basically put just about everybody on the list. And then I went to tiers of, well, how well do I know them? I don't know them at all. How long has it been since I've reached out to them? And I just did kind of a cataloging of everybody in my Outlook or my phone. And I was just beginning to try to organize them. Okay, this would be my first tier, second tier, third tier. Could I talk to somebody else who would then maybe reintroduce me there? But I was going, who knows somebody in radio? And Joe, I'm sitting there in my office. I think you know this story.
I think I've heard it.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there and I see under the C's Elizabeth Carswell. And I go, how do I know her? Oh, yeah. I had lunch with her and her business partner. They had a nonprofit. And I had lunch with them. And I did it as a favor for another friend. Okay, that's how I know her. Huh. Does she, and it hit me. I remember when we were having lunch, she told me that her family owned a local talk radio show, a station. But at the time, Joe, I wasn't thinking about radio. I was kind of in the sports TV. And so it stuck in my head, but it wasn't something I acted on. This was 6-8 months. And folks, as I'm sitting there with and I'm going, Elizabeth, okay, all right. And I put her on the list of people that I should reach out to. Right away, first here. Well, as the story goes, and Joe knows this, I did reach out to her, sent her an email. I had done her a favor. We walked away from that lunch. She felt like I helped her, gave her a lot of great ideas and some great relationships and connections. And so when I reached back out, I said, hey, listen, hope everything's going well. Would love to hop on the phone with you soon. She said, sure. So within an hour, I was on the phone with her. And I said, hey, and we did small talk. How's everything going? We talked about the things we talked about, and I said, hey, listen, here's why I called. Didn't you tell me in the lunch that your family owned a talk radio station somewhere in the area? And she goes, yeah, Jacobs Media. That's my brother. I'm an owner as well. Our dad started it in Gainesville. We've got three stations, but it's the Jacobs Media Company. And it's right up in Gainesville, about 35 minutes from here. I said, that's what I thought. So I said, listen, I'm not asking you to do something you're not comfortable doing. But if you're comfortable, I've been really thinking about getting my way on Saturdays and just seeing if I can do radio and make radio happen. And I'm willing to pay. I understand how it kind of goes. I've called the station program director 1 million times. I've emailed, no response. Would you be willing to get me a meeting with your brother? She said, are you kidding me? Done deal. He'll do it. I go, you got to be kidding me. She goes, no, I'll make it happen. And within a week, I was in Jacobs Media offices meeting with Jay Jacobs and his wife, Anna, who own and operate the stations. And it couldn't have gone any better. And for months, I had tried to get any kind of conversation there as long as other radio stations. And by going back into my web of connections and sitting for 2 hours doing a catalog of who do I know, who could I call, I remembered something. And because I had done a favor for somebody, I called him back and said, would you do a favor for me? And the answer was, of course. And I will tell you that I sit here today for a lot of reasons and a lot of help and God's blessing on my life, and a lot of people help me out. But I sit here today largely because Elizabeth Carswell set up a meeting for me with her brother. It's that simple. Now, I didn't plan to teach on this part, but let me go back. There was a point where a mutual friend of Elizabeth and I said, I think Elizabeth needs your help and advice on sponsorships and things of that nature. And that's what your company does, and you're good at it. And she's a really good friend of mine. Would you do me a favor and have lunch with her and her partner to help them? And I said, yes. Why? Because of the mutual relationship. I did a favor for one friend, a favor for Elizabeth, that she returned the favor to me later when I least expected that she could be the person, but because I got back into my web of connections and I remembered it, and then I had enough guts to ask her, and I had already done her a favor, I had added value to her, she got me the meeting. And I got to tell you, Joe, you and I have never talked about this part of it, but I got to believe that the meeting went so well with Jay and Anna because of what Elizabeth must have said to them before I ever showed up. Because of the value that I had added to her, and we had had a very good meeting, and I had really helped her out. So she's going, hey, this guy, sharp guy, runs a company, he helped me out, did me some solids. You know, all that's happening before I ever walk in the room. So they think, well, he's a nice guy. He's not a wingnut, whatever, all those things. So I want you to understand that even in these moments right now where some of you are looking for the connection, don't stop looking to help other people. The law of reciprocity, right? When Zig Ziglar taught me this through a book years and years ago, you help other people get what they want in life, you'll get what you want. And that story from my journey, which was the foundational moment in me getting into radio. Number one, I helped somebody else and I remembered it and I had the guts to ask and she returned the favor. But it is the law of reciprocity coming to meet the web of connections. And you've helped a lot of people. If you haven't, start helping people now. Not for the selfish reason of, I'm going to get a guaranteed connection. You don't know that. But I can tell you this. You start helping a bunch of people and you go back to those people and ask them for help, guess what they're going to do? They're going to help you. And they'll help you make a connection. So let's not overcomplicate this. But again, folks, I went through every contact I had, social media plus my Outlook and everything, and I began to catalog who would I contact, and I put them on this crude web. Here's my first, that inner layer, and then here's the next level, and then here's the outer edges of the web. And can I tell you that Elizabeth Carswell sat on the very outer edge, but I just happened to remember an important detail, which led to a breakthrough for me. So there's that crude drawing, but you need to get out your pencil and paper and draw your web and start to put real names in there and start to connect, because your breakthrough is on the other side of a connection. My time is almost up, but before I let you go, you matter and you do have what it takes. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, this is the Ken Coleman Show. Press on.